over time, many of the things that you talked about, even in the 80s, have proven to be true. Things that people said were not true were proven to be true. Element 115 was one of them, right?
Right. Element 115, the fuel they had, was stable. In other words, it didn't decay. It wasn't emitting radioactivity. When they synthesized the 2 or 3 atoms of the 115, it did decay, and it was not a stable element. So they're kind of two different things. But this is kind of typical. Elements always have, or pretty much always have, stable isotopes and unstable isotopes. Like I think cesium has like 30 unstable isotopes to it. So, hydrogen, for example, you're familiar with hydrogen gas. It's stable. It's not radioactive. But there's also 2 other types of hydrogen, deuterium and tritium. And deuterium isn't radioactive. It's another stable isotope of hydrogen. But tritium is radioactive. Now, they're all hydrogen, but they just have different amounts of neutrons. So it's the same thing with other elements and element 115. Depending on the amount of neutrons it has, designates the isotope, but it's 115. They will continue to take or experiment and try and make 115 at different isotopes, and I'm sure eventually they'll come up with a stable version, but it's the stable version that has the properties that we're talking about.
I've become more positive on Lazar just insofar as I think he was at S4 Area 51. And I think there's going to be a lot of corroborating evidence that he was at least there, and a lot in his story checks. John Lear and he were friends. John Lear is this babbling UFO nut. He's obsessed with UFOs. He's writing weird, like, disinfo-y style stuff with Bill Cooper, Behold the Pale Horse guy.
Which is a wild book.
Yeah. And so he's crazy. Bill Cooper.
Doesn't he talk about bases on the moon?
He talks about bases on the moon. Lear also talked about a soul catcher that like controlled our souls on the moon.
Oh boy.
And so Lear was like flooding the zone with all sorts of weird shit. Lear comes from an interesting family.
Right.
His father is Bill Lear, who's the autopilot wizard. He created the first business, basically the first private jet, the Learjet, in the 50s and 60s, and was an associate of a guy I hope we talk about named Thomas Townsend Brown.
Yeah.
And so I think, Lear was engaging in all sorts of bullshit. Was he a useful idiot, or was he a sophisticated agent provocateur? I'm totally open to him having been a useful idiot. In fact, there is a video of him saying, I was told, I was given all the Bob Lazar files or whatever, and I was told about, to actually, like, he said a guy named Admiral McClellan knew that I ran my mouth. I even have this video actually on the doc that I sent you, Jamie. He says, knew that I ran my mouth. So that's why we got Bob a job or whatever. And we knew that part of this stuff would leak. And it was like this limited hangout strategy on behalf of this guy named Admiral McClellan or whatever. And he was this useful idiot to sort of get it out.
So they somehow or another had acquired a stable version. Did they say that the stable version had come with this craft?
Yeah, it absolutely came with the craft, yeah.
So at the time, you having a firm knowledge of the periodic chart and knowing what was real and what wasn't real, what was your reaction to having this stable element 115 that wasn't even supposed to exist?
Well, everything was impossible.
Right.
I mean, down to the metal. I did get a chance to look inside the craft on only one occasion. And this was important because where the reactor sat might have been critical to how it operated, since everything operates without any interconnection, so the placement of components might be critical. So they allowed me to go inside and...
Bob Lazar, what he's talking about, like, I wanted to know, with the Bob Lazar thing, I wanted to know, first of all, I want to be around him and see if I could smell bullshit.
Did you?
Okay. No, I didn't, man. That was what's weird about it. Not only did I not smell bullshit, I went over all of his interviews. He hasn't done a lot, but he's done enough. And he's done them over the course of 30 plus years. And it's alarming how consistent his story is, which is really weird when you think about, you're talking about back engineering alien crafts and working on a top secret government test site that's carved into the side of a mountain and to camouflage it from satellites. It's such a wacky story, but the guy really did work at Los Alamos Labs. He really is a propulsions expert. He really is a scientist. did he really work on back engineering UFOs? I don't know. But the way he described their motion is exactly like what's been observed by some of these pilots that have these videos that they've captured.
And I just love that, like, NASA, I've been hearing from a bunch of folks who they're legitimately like funding research, and there's people really taking this seriously of UFO sightings, investigating them.
Yeah.
Like adding more and more sensors to collect data from just observing at higher and higher definitions. It's cool to finally see that. And he was one of the early people, whether he's full of shit or not, that kind of forced people to start taking these topics seriously.
Or at least force people to have conversations about them and maybe attempt to debunk them because it seems so preposterous, but then get sucked down the rabbit hole and start going, maybe.
And what are you thinking when you're inside of it? Like, what are you seeing?
It's a very ominous feeling because there are no, first of all, everything is one color. It's like a dark pewter color, and there are no right angles anywhere. It's as if somebody took, I've said this before, somebody took a model and fashioned it out of wax and then heated it just for a short time so everything melted. Everything looks like it's fused together. Everything has a radius of curvature where two items meet. It's a really weird looking thing. There was almost nothing other than a small foldable hatchway that looked recognizable. Everything was really unworldly, to pick on it, a way to describe it.
So you get inside this thing, and it's designed for something that's much smaller than a human being.
Yeah, you can't really stand up till you get to the very center of it.
And how tall are you?
I'm 5'10".
And what do you think this was designed for?
I'd say something close to half my height.
Wow. So these little 3-foot tallish creatures.
Yeah, and the seats were small too. I mean, obviously it was made, for something small. But there is no, there's nothing else in there. There's just seats, the reactor, and some of the subcomponents. There's no control panels. There's no bathroom. There's no decorative components or artwork or anything that you would recognize or trim. I mean, it's just a very bare bones thing.
You're not seeing any screens?
Well, there are archways around it that are part of the superstructure, and that one of the archways can become transparent. When I was in there was another group working on one of the archways, and you could call that a screen, more or less.
I've been to Area 51. I didn't see any flying saucers or anything like that.
What did you see?
I saw Defense Department experiments being performed and training activities and that sort of thing. Nothing that the taxpayer would object to. But,
of course not.
But it's a big range. There's a lot of stuff going on out there, and there's a lot of adjacent ranges. If you look at the map,
Area 4,
actually,
where he was.
That's what he said. Yeah,
That's what he said. What's your take
I
on
found
him?
his explanations curious.
Yeah. How so?
The complexity of it, and the fact that he talked about Laurentium, for example, and then decades later, it turns out that apparently there is a more stable form of that than.
That's element 115.
Sounds right. I couldn't tell you for sure.
But it's called Laurentium.
Laurentium.
That sounds like something from Battlestar Galactica. We need the
this
Laurentium
all this stuff
to power
takes
the
you
ship.
into that,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
So now I'm a little skeptical about his claims, I have to say. A friend of mine claims to know the gal who was his supervisor when he worked out there and knows what he was actually doing and where he was located, and claims that he was a guy who checked radiation on badges.
That's it.
Yeah.
And so all the rest is fiction.
According to that story.
And this is a person that you know?
Yeah.
Maybe that person's full of shit.
Maybe.
How about that?
I don't have the ground truth on this,
Yeah.
but
It's
but
interesting.
he did falsify his educational records, and he's been involved in some other things, and it just doesn't.
You talking about
with
the MIT records?
Yeah.
Yeah. He explained that to me. He said that he was working on something for the government and they sent him to MIT to learn something. And I can't say too much. I'll tell you off air because he told me not to talk about it. But it makes more sense when you hear his description of it, that essentially it wasn't documented that he was studying there, because what he was doing was really a terrible thing, a terrible experiment they're working on. When I explain it to you, maybe it'll make more sense.
Okay.
You had encounters with Bob Lazar. You know Bob, and you were around when Bob Lazar first
Now, is this going to be all about the Mylar balloon event?
What's the Mylar balloon event?
Oh, you don't know that one?
No.
So we all jump in my car to go out to the Alien Inn area out there, on
The Alien Inn, is that
out there at
yeah, it's like a
north
a
of
bar or something.
S4, north of that area. And so Bob Lazar, George Knapp, myself, and I think Gene Huff, who was Bob's friend, we all go out there. Well, unbeknownst to me, Bob has a Mylar balloon which really bounces the radar signature a lot for its size, and a bottle of gas, helium. So we find our way back out in the desert out there. I'm thinking we're on a UFO watch, which is always fun. Sometimes the best thing is the food you take along, right? And you're out there under the stars, and it's nice, and you have a good time just watching. So, but there's a rustle of things going on here, and next thing I know, there's a balloon, this Mylar balloon's inflated, and there's a slight breeze, and Bob lets it go. And we're on the opposite side of the mountain range from supposedly S4. And he wants to go that way. Thank God the wind was going in the opposite direction. It was traveling north instead of south. And it went the wrong way, So I'm thinking my life's just passed before my eyes.
Why do you think your life passed before your eyes? Because if the balloon goes towards Area S4,
it's going to get picked up,
and then they're going to go find out where it came from.
And Wackenhut Security is going to come get us, and I'm going to spend the night in jail.
Maybe he lied about that. What's interesting, though, is he's told the same exact story since the late 80s. And he doesn't seem full of shit. Now, some people are really good at lying. And, I've been tricked before, and I'm sure you have too. There's some people that are just sociopaths. They're really good at...
Yeah, they don't even, know they're lying. They're, convinced in their own head while they're spinning it.
He's obviously very intelligent, and he obviously knows a lot about science. He knows a lot about propulsion systems, and he really did work at Los Alamos, which is interesting because he's actually on the employee roster.
Yeah.
And they tried to say that he didn't. He knew people that were there. He knew the layout of the building. When he went there with George Knapp, they went through the building. He knew exactly where everything was, and he knew the people that worked there. So he really did work there, apparently, allegedly. His story, what's interesting to me is that, again, it's the same story over and over and over again. And then what's also interesting to me is that he knew and took friends to a place where they were testing these things out. And he knew where it was, and he knew when they were doing it, and he brought his friends out there, and that's when they got arrested. And
it's a very, I think there's some consistency there. That is hard to explain. How would he know where to go and what was going on? There are some possible answers to that. I've poked into this a bit. Supposedly, there was a bar off base where the scientists and a lot of the aviators and people would go and hang out. He was a frequented that place and picked up information. So, I hear stories on both sides of this. I don't know what the ground truth is, and I remain skeptical. But hey, there's a lot of crazy stuff going on.
I enjoyed his company. I went to dinner with him and Jeremy, and I talked to him for several hours on the podcast and off the podcast. I don't know. Let's tell the story about Bob real quick. Bob said he worked for Area S4, and he was hired to back engineer what they believe were alien crafts. Along the lines, he had this top secret clearance, and along the lines of all this happening, they're monitoring his phone calls. Turns out Bob's wife is having an affair. Bob doesn't know about this. They remove him from the project because they believe he'll be emotionally unstable. He's freaking out, not knowing that his wife is having an affair, not knowing why he's pulled from this project, doesn't totally understand. So starts telling people about what he's doing and telling people, listen, I can take you to a place where once a week they do these tests. So he starts bringing people to this area. They see these objects flying in these spectacular ways that we really can't do with any of our conventional aircrafts. And then Bob gets in trouble for that. Then Bob goes on the George Knapp show and starts explaining all these different things, presumably for self-preservation, because the best way to probably protect your own life is to go public with this and explain everything that's happening. And they can discredit you and make you look like a nut, but if they kill you, then it leads credence to your story.
Yeah, it gives you a very huge hardship.
So when do you
Yes.
fall into the story?
Well, you've just given me an overload of information now that I'm pretty much aware of, but I don't know exactly when. I don't think, as I recall it, everybody was pretty much at ease, and I wasn't. It wasn't part of.
What year is this that this is all going on?
Oh God, I don't know, 91.
So this is around that time. This
Yeah,
is around
91,
when was he
92.
on George Knapp's show?
Yeah, somewhere in that time frame. But I wasn't aware of a lot until I don't think at that time I was aware of him taking people out on, Wednesday nights to go see something out there. I kind of missed out on that or whatever, and I don't think this was anything like connected to that.
I think that was before this.
Yeah, probably.
That was. I think you're dealing with him out after he had met George and
Yeah.
after he had told his story.
Yeah.
You're probably like one of the most important figures when it comes to journalism in UFOs. And when you broke the Bob Lazar story, is that 89? When was that?
1989.
89. 1989, I remember reading about it. I remember hearing about it. I remember watching clips on television and watching countless Bob Lazar interviews. It all came out of you. I mean, did you think at that time, what was your thoughts about UFOs before you had met Bob Lazar, and how much did it change while you got to know him and hear his story?
It changed quite a bit. I had not really given it much thought at all. Probably the same level of curiosity as most people. You go about your life, you pay your bills, you go to work, you love your family, and it's always out there somewhere. Hey, I wonder what the deal is on that.
Right.
But had not really dwelled on it until it was a day in 1987. Into the studio comes a guy named John Lear. And I had heard sort of a little bit about him. His family was famous. His dad developed the Lear jet, the 8-track tape. John had run for the state senate, and he had a certain amount of credibility with our news organization, KLAS-TV, because he had helped us break a really big story. And the story was the stealth fighter, the F-117. He had told my boss, Ned Day, managing editor, about this amazing plane that was invisible to radar flying up in Tonopah in Area 51. We had an interest in Area 51, not UFO related, but Ned broke that story. It went national. So John Lear comes into the station one day with a stack of what turned out to be UFO documents. He plops them on Ned's desk and says, Ned, this is going to be the next biggest story, the biggest story in history. It's a UFO cover-up. Aliens are here. Technology's been recovered. Ned takes a look at it and says, I'm not doing this story. If it was true, I'd already know about it. This is crazy. Well, I'm eavesdropping, as I tend to do. I'm a curious person. So as he's going out, I said, Lear, let me take a look at this material. And I looked at it. I thought, well, this is kind of interesting. At the time, I was producing and hosting this little public affairs show, 30-minute interview show. It would air Sunday morning at 6 o'clock. Nobody watches it. It would be interviewing a city councilman, a county commissioner. What the heck? I'll put Lear on there. And I let him go. And he told me this big scenario about secret treaties with aliens and recovered technology and a giant cover-up. Some of the information sounded outrageous. Some of it seemed like it would be worth checking out.
Believe it or not, I'm not into UFOs. I don't follow stories or,
Even after your experiences?
No, I'm fascinated with the technology, and it irks me like every night I go to sleep that, that it was my own doing, essentially, that prevented me from continuing on in the project. I mean, it's that to be on that cutting edge of technology is so alluring to me.
Right.
But by the same token, I don't really care that there's aliens or where they come from. I mean, the prize is the technology, and that's what I'm fascinated by. But so I don't listen to UFO stories and that sort of thing. But George Knapp is, he's the guy that has the contacts and tries to thread everything together. And what he recently told me is he found I don't know, it was either documentation or people that he spoke to. It's that the existence of this project, the project that I was on, it's something that they seem to take out every 8 or 10 years.
So that's a very specific memo, and this is actually, this is the first time I'll be very clear with people about it. It's a big topic of conversation right now. It's called the Wilson Memo. You can look it up. Admiral Wilson met with a scientist who's actually was featured in one of my films. Everybody has been debating whether or not this document of a conversation with a sitting admiral at the time is a real document. It's an actual conversation that happened, and this document is real. Everybody wants to know. The world is going crazy right now in the UFO world. I'll tell you straight up right now, I'm in the position to know, and it is a real document, that it is real. So the conversation you read in that conversation was had. I can't attest to every...
You're not being very clear.
Sure.
Please.
No problem. So there was a document that is circulating right now that is really big. It's going around everywhere. People are asking and wondering.
What is this document?
It's called the Wilson Memo, is how you can find it online. Admiral Wilson meets with this scientist, and they have this discussion, oddly enough, at special projects at EG&G. And if I remember, the document is from 2001. I'm telling everybody right now, it's real. And we'll see. My history is pretty good with saying if something's real or not, right? So here we go. The document comes out. They meet at EG&G Special Projects. In 1989, they stumble into a problem. This happens. They put the technology away, and then they bring it back out and see if material science has caught up and if they can make any progress. So this document kind of talks about this process. The big thing I get from it, and a lot of it's vindicating to Bob, and one of the things that's vindicating, besides the EG&G thing, is that private industry, so this guy's an admiral, and he says, I found out about your SAP, your Special Access Program. I need to know about it. And he's going to a private part of industry, and he is denied access. And he says, I should be running this program. And they were able to deny him access.
This happened as part of this limited hangout strategy, where they knew that they could delete the records at MIT. They knew that they could stigmatize him because of the brothel. They knew that he was this not traditionally trained engineer who just happened to strap a ramjet on the back of a Honda or whatever and meet Edward Teller serendipitously. They knew that they had plausible deniability on all of that stuff. There's a great line in the Oppenheimer movie where Leslie Groves, played by Matt Damon, says, I didn't hire Oppenheimer in spite of his communist sympathies. I hired him because of them. So if you have a top secret program, you want compromise on people. You want to be able to blackmail them. And so I think, that should be taken at face value, in my opinion. And the reason that the story itself can't be taken at face value and needs to be seen through that lens is Lear and Bob Lazar were friends before Bob Lazar got a job at Area 51, S4. And so if you have a top secret program, you're going to do a basic background check. And Lear is going to come up as a guy with a UFO blog, right? And then the CIA is all over the UFO program, right? And he was flying CIA cargo jets. And he says that he disaffiliated in '83. That's bullshit. George Knapp and Jeremy Corbell have talked about how that's BS. And actually disaffiliated much later, into the mid-'80s or whatever. Why would you continue to pay a guy who is leaking your crown jewel secrets